In the heart of the African continent, surrounded by thick jungles and hidden from modern eyes, there was a legendary kingdom known as Fumbala. It was a place of unearthly beauty, where rivers sparkled like liquid diamonds and trees towered into the heavens, their trunks woven with vines that bloomed in colors no one had ever seen. Fumbala was ruled by a wise and just king, King Malanga, who wielded not only power but ancient knowledge passed down from generations of ancestors. However, Fumbala was no ordinary kingdom. It was said that the very land was alive with magic, a force older than time itself. This magic was entrusted to the royal bloodline, protecting the kingdom from invaders and keeping its location secret. But one day the magic faltered. An ancient curse, once locked away deep beneath the earth, was released when a foreign invader, driven by greed and ambition, breached the sacred borders of the kingdom. This invader was Lord Veron, a ruthless explorer from a distant land who had heard of Fumbala's legendary wealth. He believed the kingdom held the fabled Crown of Stars, a magical artifact that gave its wearer control over the elements of nature itself. With his army of mercenaries, Veron stormed the borders, and though the magical defenses initially repelled him, a dark spell he unleashed weakened the kingdom's protective forces. In the chaos that ensued, King Malanga sacrificed himself to seal the invader within the cursed mountains, but the cost was too great. The kingdom of Fumbala vanished from the face of the earth, swallowed by the very magic that had once protected it. It became a legend, a mere whisper on the winds of time. Centuries later, the legend of Fumbala had all but faded into myth. However, one young man named Kaito, an African adventurer and scholar, had spent his life piecing together clues about the lost kingdom. Kaito wasn't an ordinary adventurer. With his background in ancient languages and forgotten histories, he had a unique knack for uncovering truths hidden in myth. He believed that Fumbala was not lost forever, and that the Crown of Stars still existed, buried deep within the forgotten land. Kaito's journey began in the coastal city of Mombasa, where he discovered an ancient map hidden within a dusty old bookshop. The map was incomplete, but it pointed toward the depths of the Congo rainforest. Alongside the map was a cryptic inscription: "When the stars fall in the Black River, the path to Fumbala shall be revealed." The map was more than just a piece of parchment. It had strange markings that glowed faintly under moonlight, symbols that danced across the paper like fireflies. Kaito noticed that the inscriptions were in an ancient dialect, one that had not been spoken in centuries. It was a language of the spirits, the tongue of those who had once protected the hidden realms of Africa. He knew he couldn't do this alone. Kaito sought the help of his childhood friend, Lila, a skilled navigator and warrior who had grown up in the savannas of Tanzania. Lila was fierce and fearless, with a sharp wit and a loyalty to Kaito that ran deep. She had spent her life mastering the art of tracking and survival, skills that would be invaluable in the uncharted jungle. Lila's presence was a comfort to Kaito, not just because of her skill, but because of the deep bond they shared. They had spent their childhood exploring the plains, seeking out hidden caves and forgotten ruins, pretending they were adventurers on grand quests. Now they were living that dream. Lila was skeptical of the legend at first. She had heard many stories from the elders, tales that had been passed down through generations. But there was something different in Kaito's eyes, an unshakable belief that this wasn't just a wild goose chase. After some persuasion, she agreed, on the condition that they take a guide. That's how they came to find Nia, a shaman from a distant village with the power to commune with spirits and wield the ancient magic of her ancestors. Nia was the key to unlocking the secrets of the magical kingdom, and her connection to the spiritual world made her presence both eerie and comforting. She carried with her a staff made of ebony wood, adorned with charms and feathers, and she moved with a grace that suggested she was in tune with forces beyond the physical realm. Nia's village lay deep within the hills, a place where the modern world had not yet reached. The people there lived simple lives, close to nature, and they revered the spirits that governed the land. When Kaito and Lila arrived, they were welcomed with a quiet, cautious hospitality. Naya's grandmother, the village elder, had a vision of their arrival. She spoke of 3 travelers whose fate would be entwined with the spirits of Fumbala. The old woman's words were cryptic, filled with metaphors that Kaito struggled to understand, but Nia seemed to know what she meant. "This journey will not be easy," she warned them, her dark eyes reflecting the flickering firelight. "The spirits will test you and the jungle will try to break you, but if you are true of heart, you may find what you seek." And so, with Nia joining their group, the trio set off into the unknown, guided by a map that led to a place long forgotten by the world. The journey into the jungle was treacherous. The thick canopy overhead allowed only slivers of sunlight to pierce through, casting an eerie twilight across the forest floor. The air was heavy with moisture, and the sounds of the jungle were a constant reminder of the life hidden within the shadows. For days, they traveled, their path winding through dense foliage, across rivers, and over rocky terrain. The map was not straightforward. It was more like a puzzle, with symbols that needed to be interpreted at each stage of the journey. On their 4th day, they encountered a tribe of hunters known as the Bakula. The Bakula were known to be secretive and hostile to outsiders. They were painted in red and black, with masks that resembled animals, and they moved silently through the forest like shadows. Kaito had read about them, but he never thought he'd encounter them in person. The Bakula leader, a tall man with a spear tipped with obsidian, challenged them, speaking in a dialect that even Naya struggled to understand. The encounter was tense. Kaito and Lila braced themselves for a fight, but Naya stepped forward, holding out her staff. She began to chant softly, a melody that seemed to blend with the rustling of the leaves and the calls of distant birds. Slowly, the Bakula lowered their weapons. Nia's words had touched something deep within them, and they allowed the group to pass, warning them of the dangers that lay ahead. They spoke of a place where the forest was darkest, where even the bravest of hunters dared not go, for there the spirits of the past lingered, guarding the path to Fumbala. Kaito was curious about the Bakula and their connection to the ancient lore. He tried to ask them more questions, but they were reluctant to share details. Instead, they offered cryptic warnings. "Beware the whispering trees, they speak lies that can drive a man to madness, and beware the river of shadows, where the lost souls wait." One night, while camping beside a great river, they witnessed something incredible. As the moon hung high in the sky, the stars reflected in the river's surface began to shimmer and move, as though alive. Suddenly, the water of the river turned black as ink, and the reflection of the stars formed a perfect map across the surface. The cryptic inscription had come to life before their eyes. "When the stars fall in the black river, the path to Fumbala shall be revealed." It was a sight unlike anything they had ever seen. The stars seemed to move on their own, forming patterns that led their gaze to the distant mountains. Naya's eyes widened in recognition. "It's a map," she whispered. "The spirits are showing us the way." Following the celestial map, they were led to a hidden valley where an ancient stone door stood, covered in overgrown vines and guarded by mystical statues of forgotten gods. The statues had eyes made of gemstones that glowed softly in the dark, and as they approached, the statues seemed to watch them, as if waiting for something. With Naya's magical knowledge, they deciphered the symbols on the door, which spoke of trials they would need to face to prove themselves worthy of entering Fumbala. Upon entering, the air shifted. The jungle was no longer wild and chaotic, but eerily silent. They had crossed into a realm where the laws of the natural world no longer applied. It was as if they had stepped into a forgotten world where time stood still. The trees were ancient, their trunks twisted into unnatural shapes, and the air was heavy with a sense of foreboding. They soon faced the first of the three trials, the trial of strength. In this trial, they were confronted by great stone guardians, animated by ancient magic that could only be defeated through cooperation. Lila, with her unmatched combat skills, led the charge, while Kaito used his knowledge to find the weak points in the Guardians' defenses. Together, they emerged victorious. The battle was not just physical. The Guardians seemed to test their unity, their trust in each other. At one point, Lila was separated from the group, facing one of the stone Guardians alone. The Guardian loomed over her, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light, and for a moment, Lila felt the weight of fear pressing down on her. But she remembered the countless hours spent training on the savannah, the lessons her father had taught her about facing fear head-on. She raised her spear and fought with all her might, striking at the Guardian's joints, trying to find a weakness. Meanwhile, Kaito and Naya faced their own challenge. Two Guardians advanced towards them, their stone bodies moving with a speed that seemed impossible. Kaito, though not a fighter, used his quick thinking to analyze their movements, noticing that the Guardians seemed to slow down whenever they crossed paths. "We need to get them to block each other," he shouted to Naya. With a nod, Naya used her staff to channel a burst of energy, distracting one Guardian long enough for the other to move into its path, causing a brief collision. It was just the opening they needed, and together they managed to disable the stone sentinels. The first trial had tested their strength, but more importantly, it tested their ability to work as a team. As they moved forward, the environment around them began to change. The air grew cooler, and a strange mist crept across the ground. They had entered the domain of the second trial, the trial of wisdom. The trial of wisdom was unlike anything they had expected. Before them lay a vast labyrinth, its walls made of polished stone that reflected their faces, creating endless distortions. The labyrinth twisted and turned, with no visible end, and every wrong turn seemed to lead them back to where they had started. But it wasn't just a physical maze. It was also a maze of the mind. Each corridor whispered to them, voices from the past echoing through the stone. Kaito heard the voice of his father, calling out to him, and for a moment he felt the pull of nostalgia, the urge to turn and follow. Naya sensed the magic at play and placed a hand on Kaito's shoulder. "It's trying to deceive us," she said softly. "These are illusions, meant to lead us astray. We must focus." They pressed on, relying on Kaito's knowledge and Nia's spiritual guidance to navigate the maze. There were moments when the walls themselves seemed to shift, creating new paths, or when mirrors would appear, reflecting images of the trio as older, more weary versions of themselves. At one point, they encountered an old man trapped in the labyrinth who revealed himself to be one of the original protectors of Fumbala, cursed for failing to stop Lord Veron's invasion centuries ago. His eyes were sunken, his skin pale, as if he had been there for an eternity. "You seek the crown of stars," he rasped, his voice echoing through the maze. "But know this, the path is not for the faint of heart. You may find more than you bargain for." He warned them of the final trial, the trial of sacrifice. "The magic of Fumbala is alive, and it demands a price. You will not leave unchanged." The labyrinth was a place where time did not exist. There were moments when Kaito felt they had been wandering for years, reliving their memories, facing their deepest fears. He saw visions of his father, who had disappeared when Kaito was a child, leaving him with nothing but a passion for stories and exploration. Lila faced the image of a burning village, a haunting reminder of the past she had tried to forget. Nia, meanwhile, saw herself standing alone in a desolate wasteland, her powers drained, her connection to the spirit world severed. The key to escaping the maze was not to fight the illusions, but to accept them. Kaito realized that he could not change the past, that his father's disappearance had led him to this journey, and that was its own kind of guidance. Lila accepted her role as a protector, acknowledging that her past had shaped her strength. Naya, too, faced her fear of losing her powers, understanding that her magic was not just in her abilities, but in her will to help others. With these realizations, the maze began to dissolve, and they found themselves at the entrance to the final trial, the trial of sacrifice. For the final trial, they were led to the heart of Fumbala, a place where the lines between life and death blurred. The heart was a vast chamber filled with an ethereal glow, its walls inscribed with ancient runes that seemed to pulse with a heartbeat of their own. Here, they were shown visions of their deepest fears and desires, projected onto the air like ghostly apparitions. The visions tested them, trying to unnerve them, to make them doubt their resolve. In the center of the chamber, on a pedestal of carved stone, lay the crown of stars. It shimmered with a light that seemed to come from the stars themselves, a light that was at once beautiful and dangerous. As they approached, a voice echoed through the chamber, not a single voice but many, layered upon each other. To claim the crown, one must be willing to give up what they hold most dear. They had known this would come, but the reality of it was daunting. Kaito, Lila, and Naya looked at each other, each understanding what this meant. The crown would not allow itself to be taken without a price. Nia stepped forward. She had known deep down that this would be her role. The magic she wielded had always come at a cost, and she was willing to pay it. "I will give up my powers," she said, her voice steady. "If that is what it takes to save this land, then so be it." As she spoke, the light of the crown grew brighter, enveloping her. She felt the magic draining from her, a sensation like a part of her soul was being drawn away, but she did not falter. The chamber was silent, as if holding its breath, and then, with a final flash of light, the crown accepted her sacrifice. The path to the lost kingdom finally opened. Fumbala was breathtaking, far grander than the legends had ever described. It was a city of gold and crystal, with towering spires and lush gardens, but it was eerily empty. The architecture was unlike anything they had seen, with intricate carvings that depicted scenes from a time long forgotten. The buildings seemed to glow with a soft light, and the air was filled with the faint, melodic hum of an ancient song. But the city was not silent. As they ventured deeper, they could hear whispers, as if the spirits of the past were trying to communicate. Naya, even without her powers, could sense their presence. "They are watching us," she said quietly. "They are waiting." In the heart of the city lay the crown of stars, glittering atop a pedestal of stone. But as they approached, Lord Veron's spirit, bound to the kingdom's curse, rose to stop them. He had been waiting for centuries to break free, and now he sought to possess the crown and its power once more. Veron's spirit was a dark, twisted shadow of the man he once was. He no longer had a physical form, but appeared as a wraith, a swirling mass of shadows with eyes that burned like embers. "You think you can undo what has been done?" he hissed, his voice echoing across the chamber. "Fumbala belongs to me. Its magic is mine to command." A fierce battle ensued. Veron, empowered by dark magic, was nearly unstoppable. Shadows twisted around him, forming into creatures that lashed out at the trio. Lila fought bravely, her spear flashing in the dim light, while Kaito used his wits to avoid the attacks, searching for a weakness. But it was Nia, despite her sacrifice, who found the strength to commune with the spirits of the ancient kings of Fumbala. Even without her magic, she had a connection to the land, to the spirits who had guarded Fumbala for centuries. With their aid, she channeled the last remnants of magic left in the kingdom to banish Veron's spirit forever. The spirits encircled Veron, their light piercing through his darkness, unraveling the curse that had bound him. He screamed, a sound of pure rage and despair, before dissolving into the air, leaving nothing but silence in his wake. With Veron defeated, Kaito and his friends realized that the true power of Fumbala was not in the crown of stars, but in the legacy of its people. The magic that had sustained the kingdom was tied to the land itself, and though the kingdom had fallen, its wisdom and spirit could live on. The crown of stars was returned to its pedestal, its light shining brighter than ever. But instead of claiming it, Kaito chose to leave it where it belonged, in the heart of the city, where it could continue to protect the land. Fumbala does not need a king, he said. It needs to be remembered, so its legacy can endure. As they left the city, the ancient magic began to restore the land, healing the scars of time and preparing it for a new era. The whispers of the spirits grew fainter, as if they were finally at peace, and the light of the crown shone like a beacon, a symbol of hope. The journey had changed them all. Kaito, Lila, and Nia returned to the world with stories of their adventure, not to claim wealth or power, but to share the forgotten wisdom of Fumbala.